Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 85, and I spoke with Estella Nakahara-Hemp, and I really enjoyed this conversation with Estella. She's a 15-year-old young woman living in California. She talked about what it's like to be a teenager in a pretty liberal town. Her school is certainly very liberal. She talks about what that's like, trying to find her own sense of self and differing opinions and just living one's life as a teenager for her. And we talked about all sorts of things, from technology to sexual harassment to general bullying, intellect, knowledge, power, all this stuff. It was really a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. The usual stuff, Amazon portal on heyhumanpodcast.com helps support Hey Human. So if you do your shopping on Amazon, I know I do a lot of shopping on Amazon, go to heyhumanpodcast.com, hit the Amazon portal, do your shopping as normal, and it helps support what I'm doing here and getting people's stories out. So I appreciate that. Thank you. You can reach me, Susan, at heyhumanpodcast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Always, if you have stories or people that you know that you'd like me to know about, whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you. I'm all over social media. You can find me at Hey Human Podcast on the various social medias, as well as Susan Ruthism, various social medias. Please rate and review on iTunes and on your various podcast apps. And as I've been mentioning the last couple weeks, I will be in New York doing live podcasts. And I also have a show at the Bitter End on the 24th of January. It's at 6:30 p.m. with some really stellar musicians, Nikki Fernandez, Bryn Black, and Robinson Treacher. So if you're in New York, in the area, and you want to come check it out, please do. That night, I'm also going to be performing at the RAD event, and tickets for that are available on Eventbrite. To make it easy, I put the links to the tickets at susanruth.com, which is my regular website. So you can go there and click on that link if you're interested in going to that event. There's going to be a lot of great musicians for that, supporting RAD, which is a really great cause. RAD, of course, stands for Rock Against Drunk Driving. Always have a plan. Always have a designated driver. Get home safely. Okay, so let's get to Estella. She's delightful. 15 going on 40, as all teenagers are. A wise young woman, a philosopher. Very cool. I think the future is in good hands. So let's get to it. Thanks, everybody. Hi, Estella Hemp. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for being on Hey Human Podcast.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
You're my first teenager. It's very exciting.
Well, I'm honored. That is very exciting.
So we were connected from a mutual friend, April. She reached out to me and said that you would be a good person to talk to, and so here we are.
Yeah, that's awesome. She told me, she's like, I have a friend in Nashville who would love to talk to you about some things. And I was like, give her my information. I'd love to talk to her too.
Yeah, it's great. So I appreciate your time. And let's get right into it. How about a little bit of your background, who you are, where you live, and a little bit of your story?
Well, I'm 15 years old. I live in Berkeley, California, and I also live in San Francisco part-time with my dad. And, I've grown up in mostly Berkeley my whole life, but mainly just the Bay Area. And I go to Berkeley High School. I am a sophomore. And within my high school, there are small schools that specialize in certain things, and the small school that I'm in is called Communication Arts and Sciences, which is where we specialize in social justice and psychology and all that stuff, which I find extremely interesting. So that's why I've
that's really cool that they have that in school at such a start of the education career. That's great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Our teachers are all specially trained to be super invested into our learning. It's kind of built like a private school or just within a larger public school, which I really appreciate because I get really close to my peers and my teachers, and I really feel like everyone is there to help educate you instead of just a regular high school environment.
Is social justice something that's very important to you and your peers? Are you seeing that people in your generation are getting excited about that sort of thing?
Yes, definitely now at this age more than a few years ago, and also just because of the certain time period that we're in right now. I think that people are very invested into social justice and politics and honestly a lot of stuff that has to do with world problems, because I think that I'm becoming at a certain age where kids are kind of realizing like there are issues and it's time to talk about it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. What concerns you? What's one of your big topics?
Obviously, like the normal stuff like healthcare, women's rights, human rights in general, education, especially because of the fact that I'm going to be going to college in 2 years, and that really worries me with the environment that's happening right now. And all that stuff. We're learning right now about like communism and capitalism and socialism, which is super interesting for me because I've never really like actually learned exactly what each and every one of those are. So that's what I'm looking at right now.
There's a lot of people actually, but they certainly like to talk about it even when they don't know what it is exactly.
People tend to do that. Yeah.
How does that feel for you as a teenager to see the talking heads, for example, on the news or even people on social media in these huge debates over topics that affect you even more than it affects them because you're the next generation coming up? I mean, what we say about things like climate change or healthcare or taxation or any of these topics, granted, it's a lot of people in the upper areas of their lives that are talking about it, and here you are just starting your life.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of adults are kind of more focusing on that, like fighting with each other about issues that they disagree on, rather than trying to like fix things in general, or even trying to educate the people who can fix it. And I think that's also a major issue in society right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I assume a lot of your peers feel the same way.
Yeah, I've noticed that one of the main things about like spreading awareness or spreading just like people understanding things is it really just comes down to education and like non-biased education, which can be very hard, especially in a very liberal community that I live in, like Berkeley, California, like very, very liberal. And so people are like getting information and they're all thinking one thing, which is which they think is like super right idea, and a lot of it is like very beneficial towards our environment, because like everyone is pretty accepting of each other and everyone is very loving of each other, and there are still like things wrong with it, if that makes sense. Like I don't really know where I'm going with this, but I'm just trying to say, like, a lot of the time people are focusing more on fighting with each other about things rather than just, like, trying to, fix it.
It's a good thing you bring up there. If you are attending a school that has a more liberal bent, how are you learning about the other side of the argument? Because I think it's personally, I think it's important to know all sides of the argument, regardless of whether you believe it. Because I don't think any person is 100% of anything, like liberal, Democrat, Republican, conservative, libertarian, whatever. That grossly oversimplifies the human experience.
Exactly.
So how do you get that other viewpoint at a liberal school?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the main issues, in my opinion, living in Berkeley and growing up in a place like that. Because what happens is, in my viewpoint of it, like, you know how people say, like, there's a spectrum. There's, like, liberal and then there's conservative. There's, like, Democratic, Republican, like you said. Something that happens a lot is people feel as though they have to be placed on the spectrum in one certain spot. And so then it just becomes a situation where it's very extremist, and everyone's like they have to choose a side, and then once they choose a side, they're like, okay, I'm here to stay, and then they like have to fight the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they don't leave room for growth, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that something else that is a very big issue is ignorance within like ideology of like political stuff and like all that, because people like growing up in Berkeley, and because everyone's pretty liberal, like I myself am pretty liberal, but something that people are missing, I guess, is they shut out the other side before they even listen to it, just because they've been, like, as they've been growing up, they've been taught, like, you need to not believe this, not believe that, because it's, like, offensive, it's wrong, it's not correct. And so I think that there's a lot of kids at my school who will literally not listen to anyone who has any other viewpoint than what everyone around them has.
Yeah, that's a real shame, I think, and that's not what learning is about. Critical thinking requires both sides of the argument, and the one in the middle that is more gray.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you get that for yourself? Where do you seek out that knowledge that is not just what is being presented to you by your school?
Yeah, well, as I said, because of the fact that I'm part of a smaller learning community that focuses on this type of thing, one of our main ideas is to try and be open-minded, and we're constantly reminded that how hard that is, because every single day we like try and hear other sides of things. Like our teacher shows us like Fox News as well as CNN, and our teacher like we sometimes listen to like Donald Trump's speeches, and we sometimes listen like Mitch McConnell and stuff like that, just because like we need to be educated of like the other side that we've never really been given like in Berkeley until now.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good on your teachers. I like to hear stuff like that. I get very concerned when it's important for the brain to not be coddled, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. And also something else is that something that I've seen a lot of is people, they have their own ideas and then they're very stuck on them, and then they tend to say that the people who think the opposite as them are ignorant, whereas they themselves aren't willing to hear out the people who they are calling ignorant. Yes. And it's just very like
happens a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it happens a lot, unfortunately. So another thing that April had mentioned to me that is an important topic for you is harassment. Where do you come from with that, especially being, a young female coming up in the world? Where does that, what about that is something that's important to you?
At my high school, we have this club, and I go to it every Wednesday, and it's called Berkeley High Stop Harassing, and it's a club where we mainly focus on kind of just educating people of our school about like real issue problems that do have to do with heavy harassment and certain things like that. And so we do like slideshows in classrooms. We do like not really performances, but I guess just like things where people come and we talk to them about things, and it's really good because there are a lot of issues that go on in a high school environment, as like you would probably guess, and kids are getting sexually harassed, kids are getting racially harassed, I guess religiously harassed. I don't know if that's the correct term, but and even in a place where people are like, even a place like Berkeley where everyone's like, oh, we're all super happy, friendly, like there are still issues, and especially below the surface. Like last year we had a certain incident with it was this year. We had a few boys, they made an Instagram account, and it had, do you know what a meme is?
Yes. I'm not that old.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure. But they had a bunch of
adorable, though.
They had a bunch of racist memes on their account, and people were really upset about it, and so it became this thing with administration. And
racist memes?
Yeah, racist memes.
Were they white kids?
Yes,
Okay.
they were white boys,
Okay.
majority. Yeah, and it was a very big deal, and so BHO stopped harassing. We took it upon ourselves to try and kind of, like, work with another club called Black Student Union, and so BSU, and we kind of tried to talk to student body a little bit about it more, because everyone knew about it, but it was kind of just like, what happened? Like, no one really knows. All these boys got suspended, and
I'm curious,
now,
how many followers did that meme account get before it was picked up on by the administration?
Yeah, it was a private account. Mainly the kids, the class above me, followed it. I think it had like around 60 or something. That wasn't pretty big, because I think the boys knew that if they made it like a big deal, they would definitely get in trouble.
Did anyone ask the boys why they did it?
I think that people asked them why they did it after they got in trouble. Something that I witnessed was their friends, because this was a group of boys who I would say are considered like the popular kids, if that makes sense.
It does.
And yeah, and so there was kind of this like friend group within the juniors of the grade above me, and they were all friends, and there was a bunch of girls and there was a bunch of boys, and so the boys they were the ones who made the account, and they thought it was just a joke, and then the girls, they didn't really say anything for a few months, but then they finally came out with it. They like went to admin, and then everyone was like, why didn't you say anything before? And then they were just like, they were our friends, like we had no idea how to stand up to them. You know?
That's interesting. That brings up a whole other topic.
Yeah. Standing up against your friends is way harder than standing up against someone who you don't like, or like.
It's an incredibly important point. It definitely is something to, I think, it requires a lot of self-searching. That if you look the other way because somebody you know and love is behaving in a particular manner, to me, you're just aiding and abetting that behavior, and barely one step different from the behavior itself. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, being a bystander is definitely an issue when it comes to.
Do you personally know the kids that started it?
Yeah,
without giving away their names, I'm curious. Did those kids, did they have diverse friendships? Did they just think it was funny for sheer lack of judgment? Are these kids that are raised up in an environment where perhaps their parents believe the same thing that they were propagating, or?
Yeah, I think that it was honestly like just a very like lack of judgment on the boys' part. One of them had French class with last year when he was a sophomore and I was a freshman, and he was pretty nice to me a little bit. Like, he would say some kind of messed up things sometimes, but for the most part he was a pretty like stand-up guy. And so when I found out that he was one of the main people part of this, I was like, oh wow, like that's kind of surprising. And he had friends who I'd say like were diverse, but at the same time they would kind of make jokes about their own race or about like people within other races, because it was more socially acceptable for them to, because it wasn't really offensive, because it was kind of like their own identity. And I think that because of the fact they were friends with them, they were like, oh, it wouldn't really be that much of an issue, or I think they just thought that it was a joke and it like would be funny. I think they made the account private because it was a way that they could kind of let out their like offensive jokes, and they wouldn't really get backlash from it because it was just their friends. But then they actually did end up getting back with them because their friends were, they came out with it.
I am so curious to know why they were the compulsion to make offensive jokes. I'm always curious about that. How people, the energy it takes to make a meme, as I've made them before, because I'm not that old. I'll reiterate that. The time it takes to make a meme and to say something hateful or hurtful in that time period that it takes, you could be doing something really positive and lovely in the world. You could walk a old person across the street, or you could, donate a book, or, there's so much stuff that you can do that is light and wonderful in the world. I'm just curious, especially since you said the kid that spearheaded it was quote unquote, a pretty normal kid. that's why I was wondering if anybody asked the child and said, hey, or the teenager, I guess, hey, why did you do this?
Yeah, I think that the main reason why they did it, I mean, this is honestly my personal opinion on the situation, because I never really talked to them, like, personally and about it, because it was a really, like, touchy subject for a while for the whole entire school. And they had a lot of, like, community meetings with, like, BSU and with admin and stuff about it. And they didn't make the memes themselves. They reposted them off of other people, and so, like, off of other, like, meme accounts and stuff. And I think that a lot of the reason why they thought that it was a good idea, at least for themselves or in the moment, was because in Berkeley, when you're growing up, there's so much, like, pressure to be super, super respectful, which can be a very good thing. But when you get to a certain age and you see people not in Berkeley, I guess, not really treating that the way that you've been taught to, I guess you kind of get a little bit confused, and you're like, oh, so maybe it is okay. Like, maybe I can do this, like, on the DL, like I can do this, and it can, I won't get in trouble for it. And so they probably, like, thought, like, okay, now I think it's fine, like, it's not really that big of a deal, like, people can't get that offended, they're just a joke. And I think they kind of, like, put aside the like, all the stuff that they've been taught, because they're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, like, this person in, like, somewhere else is able to do it, I should be able to do it too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is an interesting concept of the fact that all young people rebel against their elders, and perhaps it comes down to something as simple as an act of rebellion, unfortunately at the expense of others, but it's not an uncommon behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
So going back to let's say sexual harassment, and you said that there is a lot of that in schools. Have you yourself experienced that personally? Sexual harassment? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, of course I have, like, to a certain extent, because I am a girl, and I am, like, in an environment with a lot of people who are also teenagers who, like, kind of think a lot of things are jokes, as, like, what we just were talking about. And so, of course, like, while you're walking down the hall, like, someone might say something, or, like, you might hear other people, like, sexually harassing other people and stuff like that. And there are a few cases of, like, extreme, like, assault or harass or stuff like that. And me personally, I've been lucky enough to never experience something, like, very serious, but it hasn't, like, that's not the case for a lot of my friends. It's not the case for a lot of, like, my sister's friends, you know. It's like, or even just my peers in general, like, even for somewhere, like, where we try and keep our kids super, like, manicured in a way where, like, they're super, like, informed about stuff like that, like, things still happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel you and your peers are confident about telling when something happens, or do you keep it to yourselves mostly?
Something that happens a lot is people, like, okay, so say if someone were to get, like, raped at a party or something, like, something super terrible were to happen to them, they'd probably, like, come home, and they'd be like, and all that stuff, and then they'd come to school in, like, a few days or a few weeks or stuff, and then they're like, they see this kid at school, like, the person who did that to them, and they're like, oh my god, like, am I supposed to go and talk to someone about this? And a lot of the time what happens is they go to, is like mainly girls, they go to admin, and they're like, hey, this happened to me. They're like, hey, this happened. I need help. I need to get this person, like, away from me. Like, can you get this person expelled? Can we, like, talk about this? Can I, like, figure this out? And then admin's like, there's no way of us knowing that this actually happened. There's, like, we can't really do much about it, because there, of course, is the possibility that the parents of the kid could sue the school, or there's the possibility that, like, people could say that the girl's lying. That happens a lot. So, yeah, that is another very big issue, is when things do happen, not much can be done about it, because it's really hard to regulate like, if something did happen.
So the
for
girls
sure.
don't go immediately to the hospital or to the police?
I think that it's like, I can't really imagine what it's like, but for some of my like friends who have told survival stories, like, they say that you're so terrified, like, in the moment, or like in the time frame of it happening, that there really is not very much that you can do, because you know for a fact that if you were to go to the hospital and you were to get like a rape kit, or if you were to go to the hospital and you were to say like this happened, or go to the police, then they'd have to investigate, and you'd have to be in this, like, if you were to go to like court or whatever, you'd have to be in the same room with this person. Like, you'd have to deal with this issue. You'd have to keep on reliving it for months and months and months if you wanted anything to happen. And I think that sometimes some people are like, I'd rather just let it be and just try and like make it work for myself. Which
Are they not worried that then like the kid who did it will do it to other women, other girls?
Yeah, that's a really big issue, definitely. I don't really know because it hasn't happened to me personally, but I think that a lot of the time, like, they're just so scared that they have no idea what to do, you know?
So I'm curious, is there any guys, without naming names, is there any guys in your school that it's known that that their behavior is unacceptable and that they have crossed the line and or raped?
Yeah, definitely. There is, 2 years ago, last year, something around that, there was this group chat between, 2 grades above mine, so the class of 2018, there was a group of boys, and they named the group chat Team 1-8, which is a tradition at Berkeley High for there to be a team every 3 years, I'm pretty sure, and, it's kind of just like they all hang out, like they're all friends. Like there's Team 1-5, there's Team 1-2, there's Team 1-8, there's going to be a Team 2-1, and these guys, they had this group chat, they were all talking, and then all of a sudden one person texted into the group chat, they're like, and there's this girl, her name is Donnie, and she's one of my really good friends, she's a senior now, and some boy texted into the group chat, let's rape Donnie, and I was just, and like, then everyone was like, oh yeah, let's do it, yeah, like, but then some of them were like, whoa, like, what are you saying? And it became this whole thing, and, it was like a huge explosion. There was a lot of police involved, a lot of like, talking to administration, and I think that some of the boys ended up getting suspended, but because one of the girls who were also mentioned in the group chat, there was a few of them that were mentioned. That was the whole thing. But specifically the one where they said, let's rape this girl, that was the main thing. And so another girl who was also like friends with the boys, because they were all friends, like they were all friends with each other. It wasn't like a segregated like group thing. It was like they were all friends, they'd all party together, all hang out together, stuff like that.
Yeah, rape very often happens by someone you know, so.
Exactly, yeah. And so then this girl who was part of the girls' friend group, she was hanging out with one of the guys, and she knew that this like group chat existed because everyone knows about the whole team thing. And she was like, she was on his phone, and she was looking through it, and she saw that, and she was like, oh my god. And so she screenshotted the text, and then she sent them to herself, and then she told the girls, and then they went to administration about it, because like she was super scared. She was like my friend was really scared. She was like, oh my god, these like people who I'm friends with are like trying to hurt me, you know?
Yeah. And so the guys that were perpetrator or intended to perpetrate, they were suspended.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that some of them were suspended. I think only 2 of them were suspended. And it was out of a really big group. I think it was out of like 8 people who mentioned something negative.
And other guys within the group stood up and said this is not okay, and yet they did not go to administration with it?
No, they didn't. A few of them were like, that's messed up, like, yo, don't say that, like, that's bad, don't say that. But they never really did anything about it until this girl,
right,
forward with it.
How do you feel about the Me Too movement?
Yeah, that was the Me Too movement. I think that I think that people get the misconception that they think that, like, by people posting hashtag Me Too, it's going to be, like, changing things, like, super, super big change. And I think that it's solely just to, like, spread awareness of how common, like, sexual harassment and sexual assault is. And I think that, like, a lot of people who say that, like, this is not good, it's not benefiting anyone, it's just like it's just mindless tweeting or, like, Instagramming something that's not really gonna do anything. Like, I think that it's actually way more than that, because it's, people always say, like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, it's like, it doesn't really happen that much, like, and then this is a chance for people to be able to come out and not entirely specifically say exactly what happened to them, but be able to say, like, this has happened to me, this does happen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's good.
Of your girlfriends, and even some of your guy friends, because I know that it's also a concern among young men, how many that you know have been assaulted in some way or another? What would you say percentage-wise? Because I remember when I was in high school, the percentage was pretty high. Yeah.
We had a survey last year that surveyed our whole entire student body that was, like, be honest and say, like, have you ever been, like, sexually assaulted in school and stuff like that. I don't exactly remember the actual data. I could probably send you a link or something of the actual data, but I remember that the numbers were pretty high of people who had them, and like, way higher than they should be, like, at all the numbers. Like, it was very upsetting. Yeah. And I would say it's not really, like, assault is a little bit more rare than harassment, definitely. Yeah. But I would say within every friend group, at least, like, one person has been, like, a victim of, like, assault.
So what are some of the harassing things that have been said to you?
What?
What are some of the harassing things that have been said to you? Again, without naming names, just things that have been said to you.
Just, like, people calling you, like, a bitch, it's, like, and stuff like that, saying, like, you're a hoe or you're a slut, or you, like, you fuck around, just a bunch of stuff like that. And it's a lot of things when it comes down to, like, social media, definitely, because people don't necessarily ever say it to your face, and it's either, like, to another friend of theirs, or it's over the internet or over texting. Mm-hmm. And then you know.
Do you feel that women can be just as hostile as men in this regard, that the harassment comes from females as well as males?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I think that a lot of the time, like, I think that girls can definitely sexually harass guys. Like, they can definitely, like, objectify them. They can definitely, like, be super just offensively mean about, like, a guy's sexuality when it comes to, like, they call them, like, a fuckboy, or they'd say, like, you're a player, stuff like that. And so yeah, I definitely think that girls can be perpetrators to that sort of thing to guys, 100%. And I also think that something that's very common is internalized misogyny when it comes to girls, is they can also, like, sexually harass other girls by saying that they're, like, very slutty or very, like, hoish, or they do all this stuff and they shouldn't, you know, or, like, they kind of, like, say that sexuality is bad, like, you shouldn't like, mess around with people because it's, like, not respectful to yourself. Like, there's lots of slut shaming, and I think that is a very big thing when it comes, like, to internalized misogyny, definitely.
Do you think in an age that we're in now, where there is such a sensitivity to vulnerability and communication, you know, we rely a lot on our tech and our social media as means of communication, and I think that it's a lost art to be vulnerable and to have a one-on-one intimacy, if you will. Do you think that in light of all those things, first of all, do you agree with that? And secondly, in light of all of that, do you think that that promotes a level of promiscuity that is minus connection among your peers? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do you think that people seek out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that your thing about vulnerability within like human connection is a very good point, because what happens a lot is people kind of live their life through their representation of themselves over social media, which is really sad, because like people kind of seek out to be a certain thing so that they could show people like over their Instagram accounts or their Snapchat stories, and they want to be friends with certain people so they look cool like to other people like over social media, and they do all that. And I think that our generation is definitely lacking like just that feeling of being able to connect with someone on a certain level that people used to be able to. And I wish that I like knew what that was like a little bit more, because I'm kind of just like growing up in this time where that is kind of foreign to us, at least since we were very little kids, like still playing with like silly bands and like hopscotch and stuff, you know, in elementary school. And so I definitely think like as much as I think that technology can bring people together, like I've met some of my best friends over the internet, and like I've met people who I would not have known of like over Instagram and stuff. Like as much as I think that technology brings people together, I also think it kind of gives off a stigma that you have to be a certain way and you have to present yourself a certain way. I also think that it does give off a certain idea of friendship that is very different from how it used to be, if that makes sense. Like, I think that in the older days, like, people used to be able to just, like, kind of go up to, like, people used to just be able to, like, call their friend and be like, hey, let's go hang out, whereas now it's kind of just, like, a texting conversation, or like a Snapchat conversation, like that's that, you know? Mm-hmm. As I said, like people are kind of living their lives like through their devices.
And they have to live up to a particular status quo within it. Talk about that for a second.
The whole like status quo thing is just kind of like people go on Instagram and they see all these other kids like doing all these really fun things, you know, like presenting themselves a certain way. And so as another teenager who's kind of like constantly comparing themselves to other people around them, they're like, oh, okay, I need to do this too. I need to be like this. This is like how I need to be successful within my like peers, you know, like this is I need to be cool. And so they kind of go out of their way to make friendships with certain people. They go out of their way to look like a certain type of person just so they can kind of they can look a certain way, you know, like to other people. They can like be cool, they can be like interesting, they can be fun to be around, they can be like funny, you know,
even if that's not real life. That's that portrayal.
Well,
it's interesting too, because I think it's not just kids, it's parents. You know, you see from the very get-go, parents are constantly filming their children nowadays. Yeah. And I wonder what that does to a person's personality if they feel like they are always on, you know.
To the parent or the kid?
To the kid. How the kid will grow up in an environment where they're always having to be funny or perform for their parents or be, you know, in that regard, you know. So in part with my other question was, in light of the fact that there is an absence of vulnerability and connection and that, do you think kids become more sexually promiscuous in an effort to feel something, even if in that interaction it's not necessarily vulnerable or connective? Because you can have sex and not connect with someone. Yeah. We all know that. Definitely. That's a fact.
Yeah. Wow. I never thought about it like that. That's so interesting. I think that definitely like people like, as I know, like it's a human want to like have intensity, you know, like it's just by nature, like people enjoy feeling things, you know, and like as you said, with the lack of vulnerability, like of course it makes complete sense of why people kind of go seeking just to have something, like whether or not it's negative or positive, you know, like as long as they're getting something in general, like that will fill their void, I guess, that they're missing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think that is probably like a big influencer on why people act a certain way that they act.
Are there students at your school that are aware that all the use of the devices is maybe creating this falseness And are there people that are trying to not? Do they put down their phones? Do they try and be in the moment? Or is it still something that maybe a couple generations from now will do out of protest or rebellion in their own right?
Yeah. I think that definitely something like something a lot of kids do is they are like, okay, so you know how there's do you know what a Snapchat streak is?
Yeah. What? Snapchat streak?
Yeah.
I know what a Snapchat is, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. On Snapchat, they have this thing called a streak where when you Snapchat someone every single day, you get a number by their name, and it tracks every single day that you talk to them. And it's become kind of a thing that kids strive for with their friends. They're like, oh, I have a 30-day streak. Like, and then sometimes kids are like, oh, I have a 230-day streak, And it's like, Jesus. But sometimes it's like, that's like a thing that people can be proud of. And I've realized, like so many people do that, and then so there's still the kids that are still really, really obsessed with like always having to be on it every single day, every single minute, and that's just like a receipt of that. It's like showing that you literally talk to a person every single day, like over a phone instead of just going and hanging out with them.
It is interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. And now I see some of my friends and they're like, hey, like, let's not go on our phones for 3 days, or like, let's delete Instagram and Snapchat and like Tumblr and all this stuff. Like, let's delete it. Let's see what it's like. And we do it for like weeks. Like I've done it for like a week before, where I've like deleted Snapchat. I've like, it's stuff like it's really interesting because you kind of like, you feel like you're experiencing things more, like in your like day-to-day life, but at the same time you're kind of like, am I missing out on something? Because every single person around you is like, if you're at school, like every single person around you is like on Snapchat all the time or on Instagram all the time.
During class they do this?
Yes, definitely. Like kids are always on their phones in class.
Even if teachers don't make them put their phones down?
No, they do, but I mean, kids still find a way around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've proven that the phones, they're getting an actual chemical boost every time they get likes or get noticed, or their stories are shared. And so these phones have rewired how we seek approval and what turns us on,
That brings up a really good point because I was just watching an episode of this show called Black Mirror a few days ago, where it's a really good show, yeah. And it was season 3, like episode 4 or something like that. And this woman, it was about this whole kind of like future topia thing. I don't know what that's called, but
dystopia.
Yeah, dystopia, there we go. Yeah, and
although I think in the show they try and make the dystopia seem like it's supposed to be an oasis of wonder, and they show that it's actually not.
Yeah, I think that Black Mirror did a really good job with it because they kind of the story about this girl, this young woman who lives in this world where your brain is kind of wired where you look at someone and you can see their rating out of like 5 stars, and society is kind of built off of your rating, based off like on your social media accounts,
It's the episode with Dallas Howard, right? The redhead. Yeah. It's the very first episode of season 3, and it's exceptional.
Yeah, and it's that's it, I think. Yeah. And so she's going around and she's like, every time you have an interaction with someone, you give them a rating. And this kind of makes it so that you always have to be super like, hi, like, how are you? Like all this super fake stuff, because no one can be vulnerable, because you will drop down on your rating and you won't be able to buy the house that you want, or you won't be able to get this job, or you won't be allowed to go to this party or this wedding and all that. Yeah,
it's really well done. That show does such a great job with commentary on our technology versus humanity's story.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of like, it brings up the idea, like, what if that is our future, that is so terrifying to think about, because like humans aren't even really being humans anymore. It's mainly just like you're talking to a rep, you're talking to like just a fake face of someone who they're just trying to like seek approval of everyone else.
That's why I find it so fascinating that people are weirded out by the idea of artificial intelligent beings who are modeled after humans and can integrate in human society, why they are so like, oh my gosh, that seems so horrible. And I think, how much different is that than what we're already living?
Yeah.
Many of our relationships are artificial intelligent driven because it's through our phones or our Instagrams or, you know.
I think that when it comes to technology and stuff like that, you can really go two ways when it comes to making relationships with someone. You can, of course, meet someone off of like Facebook, or you can meet someone off of any social media like Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all that. You can like kind of learn about their existence, you know, like say they go to a different school or they work at a different job than you, and you have like mutual friends who you never really would have found out about them if you didn't like see them on your like.
Sure. And I agree with that. That's a great way to make the world smaller.
Yeah.
If it translates to real life, I think.
Yeah, and if it translates to, that's the whole thing with the two ways. If it translates to real life and it kind of goes into the whole idea of like, you hang out with this person now and you have like a genuine friendship, like that can be very beneficial and very good for you, like meeting new people and like learning new things about people. But then it can also go the other way, where it's like just this person who you kind of get to know over a certain like messaging app, and it's kind of just like this whole thing where it's like you know all these people who you don't actually really know, you know?
What do you think about, well, you talk about meeting friends on Facebook or Snapchat and the like, people you didn't know. What do you think about the catfishing schemes or like the human trafficking schemes and things like that? Is that something that you and your friends are aware of?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Now that, Instagram got this new update where it shows, like it says like 3 usernames and it says like plus 63 more, plus the more about the mutual like friends that you have over it. Like if someone tried to follow me because I have like a private Instagram account, it would say like right below their name, it would say this friend of yours follows them, for this friend of yours follows them, and then like 64 more of your friends follow them. And so to me that kind of says like, okay, they're real, you know, like okay, they're a person who goes to like the school that it says in their bio, or goes to like friends with these people. And so that's kind of a way for you to know like, okay, like, yeah, these people are real. And I think that Instagram did a really good job with that. Like, it was very smart. And when it comes to catfishing, I've ran into a few accounts where it's obviously catfishing, but the thing is, because of how big social media is, because everyone's talking about it all the time, you can easily just like text your friend and be like, do you know this person? And then, and then you can like just decline their follow request, or you can just block them in general, you know, if the person's like, no, that person seems really weird, you shouldn't let them follow you. And for trafficking, for like human trafficking, sex trafficking, all that, I've never really heard any stories about people around me being victims of that, because people have been pretty smart about like who they get in contact with over the internet. But it's definitely an issue like in other places. It's definitely an issue like in other cities even close to mine, like Oakland, I've heard, is one of the biggest like human sex trafficking like in like the nation, you know, like it's apparently really big. I think it might be like second or maybe like first or third, I don't know. Yeah, we were learning about it a few weeks ago in my class.
So what is your big topic, the thing that you are that moves you the most as far as what's coming in your life? What's your pursuant cause?
I really like focusing on kind of just like psychology in general, but also mainly just like mental health. You know, I think that that's an issue that people mention, but people don't actually really talk about, you know, because it's kind of a thing where it's like, yeah, it happens, yeah, it sucks, and all that, but there isn't really much that people like want to do about it, because it would change just like the whole build of society, you know, because of course there's like bullying, of course there's like drugs, and of course there's like so many things that like nurture a person into getting a mental illness or being like or like having issues. And so I think that it's really hard to find the root of the problem, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at this point, people just need to be able to be more open about mental illness because it's so common, you know? It's like, it's such a big thing. And I don't think that people really talk about it enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. And, of course, there's also, like, politics and stuff. But I'm not super... I'm, like, for a teenager, I guess I know, a bit. But as a person, I wouldn't say I'm, like, the most politically savvy. So, of course, I care about it. But they're, like... I'm in a youth and government program, and so there's stuff like that. So I'm learning, but there isn't really like stuff that I know like what to do about it. Like, you know, for when it comes to politics, because like I'm still a child and I can like build my way up to that, but that's still like a work in progress.
Although
you know?
I think that kids, most especially, because they are perhaps more open to reason and to critical thinking, that you are the voice of our future. And if nothing else, because you're the voice of the future, you standing up now and saying, hey, y'all are fucking shit up pretty bad, and I have to live in this place in the next, 80 years, 100 years, and as do my children, my children's children. So your voice is truly an exceptional voice to get out there. And I encourage you to get your friends and to get out there and talk as loud as you can and to, learn as much as you can, but to certainly let your voice be known. Don't ever think that because you are not 18 yet that your voice doesn't matter. It does. It really, really does.
Oh, thanks, Susan.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you are really right when it comes to, like, we are the voice. I try, like, right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to, like, learn as much as I can, and I'm definitely trying to, like, gain that, like, confidence almost, just to be able to, like, go out into the world and be like, this sucks, and this sucks, and this sucks, and this is what we need to do about it. But I don't really know, like, what exactly we can do to fix it. It's like not just super easy.
Sure.
But
talking about it is the first step, for sure.
Yeah, exactly, definitely. I think that's the thing that I'm focusing on right now the most, like learning and talking about it and stuff like that.
If 1,000 kids showed up on the White House lawn and demanded to be heard about the environment or about the opioid crisis or about human trafficking or maybe 5,000 kids. Maybe it's a million under 18-year-old march or whatever it is. People will listen.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope it, like, I honestly sometimes, like, wish that I lived in Washington, D.C. area, because, like, I've been there before, and every time you go, you're like, oh, I feel like if I do something, it'll make a difference, you know?
You can do something where you are, I promise. It makes a difference every place you are, all over the world. Like Malala, the young girl who was shot in the face, who was standing up for the rights for females to get an education. And she's a good example of a kid who said, I'm not putting up with this. I am going to speak my mind, and I'm going to change the world.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't give up hope for that. And you just start.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're so right. You're definitely right.
Yeah.
Well, it's so inspirational.
Good. We all need inspiration.
Do you have questions?
Pardon?
Do you have any further questions?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that you'd like to cover at all that we might not have.
Can't really think about it now, but I'd love to talk to you another time.
Yeah, great. Sure. And if you want to get together some of your friends, maybe we could do like a group thing where...
Oh my gosh, that sounds so much fun.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Estella, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you so much for talking to me and having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. And if you want to send me some links to things that you want people to know about, I'll post them on heyhumanpodcast.com and get that stuff out there. And keep fighting the good fight. Keep learning. Keep being curious.
I will.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.